Out of a basic tutorial of passionate ate potatoes, unfotografering, det kan leda till en antibakterie, som är återbar om förlösta mojsen mina poppen, assan.
Okay, what's up, guys? Good evening. So this is going to be a different kind of show. So tonight we got 5 pages, just 5. This is basically editor's notes about the contents within the Slavic versions of this book. So this is quite fascinating. Then, after that, I'm going to take another break, and we're going to have a surprise guest who's going to hang out for maybe like 40 minutes or so. All right. Let's get on with the show because I'm excited. I don't want to linger too long. And to be thematic, I found a black metal band from the Ukraine called Welyar. And this is their self-titled album that came out this year, and that's what you just heard. I Can't Refuse the Flight. I found something I had never heard before just for this. Anyway. Oops. I have jumped a page. Okay. The Slavonic editions. Let me see how we doing here. I see the chat room for anybody who is interested in tuning in. And we got nobody tonight. That's all right. The Slavonic version of the Jewish War, surviving in Russia and it says Romanian copies over here, which at some points differ slightly from one another, was made accessible to Western readers by the late Dr. Berendt, though in the view of Dr. Eisler, it reveals some traces of Semitic original. The MS from which the version was made was undoubtedly written in Greek. Perhaps this was the first Greek version of the Aramaic to which the preface refers, published in Titus' reign and followed in Domitian's by a considerably revised second edition, forming our present text. The Slavonic lacks a great many passages of that text. And has others in a different and apparently more primitive form, and contains additional matter entirely missing from the Greek. Most of these passages are of little intrinsic interest, and may well have been omitted from the later editions in the course of a literary tidying up. For none of them could an interpolator have had any motive. Others, which bitterly attacked the venality and treachery of the Romans, may well have given offense and have been omitted later in response to protests. The crudeness of the original account of Josephus' contemptible conduct after the fall of Jotapata may likewise have been felt to need toning down. Instead of Josephus, shall we put it down to divine providence or just luck? Was left with one other man, it runs. After saying this, he counted the numbers cunningly and so deceived them all. Some few passages, however, are of the greatest interest, containing as do records of John the Baptist, Jesus Christ, and the early Christians. These records, like the famous allusions in Antiquities, are condemned as spurious by critics who, victims of their own wishful thinking and bent on destruction, are prepared without a trace of MS authority. I'm not sure exactly what MS stands for, forgive me. To bracket or reverse the meaning of any passages that conflict with their pet theories. So, MS must be some sort of very reputable standard of facts, and it's a question of what is MS? Is it an institution like we think of a Department of Education, or is MS a process? What is MS, right? There's a context to something in publishing, and like, this is interesting stuff, right? And so I would have to know a lot more about the book at the time of its writing as such. Like, was this appendix in other in the original version of what Penguin Publishing was given to translate or release? Was Penguin Publishing the first English translation as far as modern English, if you will, right? Okay, some few passages, however, are... Okay, I'm sorry. MS... It is to be observed also that the forging of these passages for propaganda purposes could not have rendered the least service to a Christian apologist. They could never influence anyone not already convinced by the Gospels. They are, in many important points, irreconcilable with Christian traditions, and they clearly reveal their author not as a believer, but as a doubting, if curious, onlooker. If then these passages are genuine, how did they come to be omitted from the Greek text? The answer is surely simple. If that text represents the final form, the final form of the book, an edition published when Domitian, the hater and prosecutor of Christianity, was at the height of his power, would it not have been the last degree of folly, most improbable in one as careful of his own skin as Josephus, to include references to Christ as benefactor and miracle worker, something more than a human, unjustly condemned by Roman authority, and perhaps raised from the dead, whose followers too had worked wonders, signs beyond the power of medicine? And if it was not safe to speak thus of Christ, could it be safe to speak of the man who had foretold his kingship? It should be remembered that in Josephus, as in the New Testament, the words king and Roman emperor are interchangeable. The substance of these controversial passages is given in the paraphrases that follow. Fascinating. Okay. So here he is being very honest about the political attitudes towards Christianity at the time being in the mix, which would be a good cover of current events as an excuse for the shadow players to obscure history when mankind would have been preferred a better service of understanding who someone was. But people responsible for this must have fallen out of personal responsibility, must have lost the wisdom to handle the nuance of a cult whose rise changed the entire ontology of the world. Okay. John the Forerunner. So the title off the bat here has an annotation. Let's take a look. Following their money on page 120. 24. At that time, a man was going about Judea remarkably dressed. He wore animal hair on those parts of his body not covered by his own. His face was like a savage's. He called on the Jews to claim their freedom, crying, "God sent me to show you the way of the law." Are we talking about, is this John the Baptist? Because wasn't John the Baptist like a shaman? He was like very, like, dirty, like, but a shaman. So that you can shake off any yoke. No man shall rule you, but only the Most High who sent me. His message was eagerly welcomed, and he was followed by all Judea and the district round Jerusalem. All he did was to baptize them in the Jordan and dismiss them with an earnest exhortation to abandon their evil ways. If they did so, they would be given a king who would liberate them and master the unruly, while himself acknowledging no master. This promise was derided by some, but believed by others. Okay, so yeah, we all get that because John the Baptist is the key, possibly the most powerful priest that is not Jesus Christ in Christian mythos, because he's the initiator of his ministry. He does not start his ministry without this guy's literal anointing. Call it a blessing if you may. Now, Archelaus. The man was brought before Archelaus. At the time Archelaus' expulsion, John cannot have been more than 13. 13. They're saying John the Baptist was 13 years old? Call Dr. Hillman. Somebody's going to need to have an argument. But anyway. Anyway, and an assemblage of lawyers who asked who he was and where he had been. He replied, "I am a man called by the Spirit of God, and I live on stems, roots, and fruit." When he was threatened with torture if he did not stop behaving and talking like this, he retorted, "It would be more to the point if you stopped acting so disgracefully and submitted to the God you profess to worship." Simon, a scribe of Essene origin. Now remember, he had to go through all that length to give you the lowdown on the Essenes. I wonder if this is going to be now in better context. Sprang up and exclaimed angrily, "We study Holy Writ every day. You have just come out of the forest like wild animal, and do you dare put us right and mislead the people with your damnable nonsense?" All right, so so like, it's kind of funny because it's kind of like these are like so these are two kinds of like Jews, right? Right, you've got the Essenes who are and I'm assuming this is the Essene cult, right? So there's the Essene cult and then there's the Essene families, right? They're not in the cult, but basically they do what the Essenes do, and they're like related through the blood of the Zadokites, right? They're all descendants of Zadokites in some loose association, if they are supposed to be Zadokites, right? There's like, if this book has made anything clear, is how goddamn fucking fragmented they are. So anyway. So, Archelaus and an assemblage of lawyers who asked who he was and where he had been. He replied, "I am a man called by the Spirit of God. I live on..." I'm sorry. I should have gone all the way down here. Simon, a scribe. Yeah, so these guys, they're coming out of the wild, and they're like, is this supposed to be like a zealot thing? Because the Essenes and the zealots were opposed to each other, but they kind of came from the same thing? Is that what we're getting at? Simon, a scribe of Essene origin, sprang up and exclaimed angrily of the Holy Writ. Right, okay, so I just read that. Damn well nonsense. Simon then rushing at him to tear him to pieces. Damn, just like that's just worth getting to absolute violence, right? It's like, it's just like my for all my discipline, I have no self-restraint because I find myself in the presence of one who is personally insulting to my God. Like, not that he's putting an insult upon. Well, no, he is. That is kind of what he's. Yeah, he's coming out. Okay, so yeah, I mean, yeah, he is. He's coming out, and like, it would be like coming out and trying to say, you can shoot someone in the head in Times Square, right? It's just like you coming out and just saying you can do that. You can just shoot someone in the head in public in Times Square, an innocent person, right? Somebody may want to tear you to pieces because of how fucking horrible of a person he thinks you are, because you misunderstand the connective tissue that gets to the point of that statement, and you don't care about the connective tissue of it. You'd rather just get violent. Right? And this is because you're insecure and that you're afraid that that's going to make, that suggestion is going to become an infectious idea to everyone around you who you are trying to control the way they are. So your world makes sense. I talk a lot about this during various aspects of my read on Heidegger, right? So, he's tearing someone to pieces because that person just said some shit that's tearing his world to pieces. And he's trying to salvage it before it hits the most fragile part of the glass. He doesn't like the cracks that have been made thus far. All right. But the man replied with a warning, "I will not reveal to you the secret that is in your midst, as you have refused to listen, and so have brought immeasurable disaster upon your own heads." Then off he went to the other side of Jordan, where he resumed his work unmolested. So, the next passage is John, Philip, and Antipas. During his reign, Philip dreamt that an eagle pecked out both his eyes. He summoned his advisors, and then they had given a variety of interpretations. In came unannounced the man mentioned above, who used to go round in animal hair and cleanse people in the river Jordan. He began, "Listen to God's message, the dream you had. The eagle, with its ferocious rapacity, represents your own cupidity, the sin that will cost you your 2 eyes, that is to say, your throne and your wife." Before sunset, Philip was dead and his throne passed to Agrippa. So let's see what's going on with Agrippa. Following the Perea. Oh, wait a minute. Agrippa is 2, so I already missed 1. Philip died in 33 or 34 AD, several years after John, and 3 years before Agrippa's ascension. His wife, Herodias, then married his brother Herod. This shocked and disgusted all who respected the law, but they dared not take Herod to task. 1 second. There was a verse 3. There it is. Oh, there's quite a few. Okay, hold on. There's a lot of annotations on this page. 1 second. Okay. Antipas, according to Antiquities, her first husband was not this Philip, but a half-brother of Antipas who was still alive, and Antipas married her. All right. The man we refer to as a savage, and he alone faced Herod and fiercely assailed him. You have married your brother's wife in defiance of the law, and just as he died a cruel death, so will divine vengeance bring your life to an end. The judgment of God is inexorable, and you are doomed to die miserably in exile. He died at Lyons in 39 AD. Lyons, which I think that's in France. Yeah, I think that's in France. So he would be in exile. So that seems like it was correct. For you are not raising up seed unto your brother. You are indulging your own lust and committing adultery, considering that he has left 4 children. According to Antiquities, only Salome. This attack infuriated Herod, who ordered the man to be flogged and kicked out. Probably because Josephus is quoting something that's probably why that's what I think it is. I think that Josephus, he's writing it, but he's telling the story his way and weaving it through historical records in one context and personal testimonies in other contexts, quoting someone else who may have gotten it wrong, but he quoted him correctly, meaning that the guy he quoted got it wrong. His only job was to quote him correctly, to say what he said exactly right, because it's not your words. You know, anybody who thinks that it's you, it's just like, no, I quoted him correctly. He got it wrong. That's what he said. He literally made a mistake. It could literally be just that. And it probably was just happening so much that he didn't want to write on every sentence to pad the book out. And this here was his exact quote, and it was incorrect. And then he has to write that everywhere in the book. It's going to add like 6 needless pages. Anyway. This attack infuriated Herod, who ordered the man to be flogged and kicked out. But he constantly waylaid the tetrarch and reiterated his accusations, till Herod lost control altogether and ordered him to be killed. He was a strange creature, not like a man at all. He lived like a disembodied spirit. He never touched bread, even at the Passover feast. He would not eat the unleavened bread or pronounce the words, "In thankfulness to God, who delivered the nation from slavery, shall you eat this." It was given for the flight because the journey was made in haste. Wine and other strong drink he would not allow to be brought anywhere near him, and animal food he absolutely refused. Fruit was all that he needed. The whole object of his life was to show evil in its true colors. Interesting. Okay, I get it, right? He's doing this feral purity thing. That's what he's doing. He's just doing feral purity cult. That makes perfect sense, to be honest with you. I get that. Whoops. The ministry and crucifixion of Jesus. Following Jerusalem forthwith on page 131. Okay. It was at that time that a man appeared if man is the right word. There is an Antiquities of similar sentence where Jesus is named, who had all the attributes of a man but seemed to be something greater. All right, Josephus, let's hear it now. Let's hear it now. Come on now. His actions certainly were superhuman. I bet they were, Joey. For he worked such wonderful and amazing miracles that I, for one, cannot regard him as a man. Dude, this is vomit. Oh, this is vomit. I want to vomit. This is not even, he's not even trying to give historical, objectivity here. Yet, in view of his likeness to ourselves, I cannot regard him as an angel either. Okay, everything that some hidden power enabled him to do, he did by an authoritative word. Some people said that their first lawgiver had risen from the dead and had effected many marvelous cures. Others thought he was a messenger from heaven. However, in many ways he broke the law. For instance, he did not observe the Sabbath in the traditional manner. At the same time, his conduct was above reproach. He did not need to use his hands. A word sufficed to fulfill his every purpose. Okay, see, that's very interesting, right? He's making the point. It's just like he's making the point that he was so good that he didn't have to do anything himself, right? Like that's a mob boss. A mob boss doesn't have to get his hands dirty, right? So many of the common people flocked after him and followed his teachings. There was a wave of excitement, expectation that he would enable the Jewish tribes to throw off the Roman yoke. As a rule, he was to be found opposite the city on the Mount of Olives, where also he healed the sick. He gathered around him 150 assistants and masses of followers. When they saw his ability to do whatever he wished, by a word, they told him that they wanted him to enter the city, destroy the Roman troops, and make himself king, but he took no notice. So that means, they were all saying it around him, and he just ignored it. He didn't run away from it. He just let it be there, and he just kept going, right? But we all know that when push came to shove with the Pharisees, he said, "Render unto Caesar." So we all know what side his bread is buttered here, okay? So he had 150 assistants. Mount of Olives. That's why there was bread and fish. They were awestruck by the fact that he had natural leadership skills, where he could talk to people, organize people, tell them we got a plan for a thing upon an agreement. And that's all it took. That's all it took for these people to be hypnotized by him. That's ridiculous. If I'm a regular dude walking down the street and I hear that this dude can do that, I'd be like, okay. Okay, he's healing people. Okay, good. I mean, our healthcare system in the empire is terrible here. We get terrible. Where are the nurses? Where are the fucking nurses? Right? Good for him. Right, because also it's real time. You don't know what the hell is about to happen with the psyche of the fucking universe with this guy's fucking image, right? So anyway, so that's it. That's what all this is about, right? And so it's just he basically looked at all these people that were not the assistants, and they were just like, "Hey, do you guys, how much fish you got? How much bread? You only got that much fish. You only got that much bread. That sucks. Hey, let's have some more bread." And he probably just said it like that. He probably just made it. And all he did was tell a bunch of people that trusted him that they were working together towards common goals and causes, committed to doing it. They didn't have to fucking pay him if they're all just true believers, And they all went and they fucking handed out some shit. It's just like, and that's how much bread and fish they were going to actually have. Right? All because they went through the little ritual that he did by listening to the sermon and all that shit. And it's the miracle that he got some people to be kind and give them free food. Remember, starvation is going to be a key theme here. Right? Are we fishing? Or are we teaching people to fish? And it's a lot harder to catch a school of fish by yourself. It's much easier if you've got, like, 2 boats, and a crew on each boat. You need, like, men. Anyway. And then once again, it's a question of the women. What's going on with the women that are not mentioned anywhere in any suggestion? Anyway, when the suggestion came to the ears of the Jewish authorities, they met under chairmanship of the high priest and exclaimed, "We are utterly incapable of resisting the Romans. But as the blow is about to fall, we'd better go and tell Pilate what we've heard and steer clear of trouble in case he gets to know from someone else and confiscates our property, puts us to death, and turns our children adrift." So they went and told Pilate, who sent troops and butchered many of the common people. He then had the miracle worker brought before him, held an inquiry, and expressed the opinion that he was a benefactor, not a criminal or agitator or would-be king. Then he let him go, as he had cured Pilate's wife when she was at the point of death. So the magistrate is also the character witness. This is part of the reason why Jesus keeps his mouth shut. It's ethics. Whether Jesus likes it or not, whether Pilate likes it or not, he has to come under the jurisdiction of a man that knows him. But does nobody know that Jesus has done this for his wife? This certainly is not something. If it's in the fucking Bible, nobody ever brings it up. Nobody ever brings it up, Never once have I heard a thing about that. You would think there'd be times where you'd frame it that way because people love framing relationships of Jesus, right? It's just like Christians love to be like, what about Jesus' friendship with this guy and Jesus' friendship with that guy and Jesus' words to this man, so, and all that stuff. And then you look in like, who is each of these kinds of men, and you see them here. It's all this shit. So anyway. So they went and told Pilate, who sent troops and butchered many of the common people. He then had the miracle worker brought before him. Oh, I'm sorry. Why am I reading that again? Returning to his usual haunts, he resumed his normal work. When the crowd grew bigger than ever, he earned by his actions an incomparable reputation. The exponents of the law were mad with jealousy and gave Pilate 30 talents to have him executed. Accepting the bribe, he gave them permission to carry out their wishes themselves, so they seized him and crucified him in defiance of all Jewish tradition. Now, you see, that part's interesting. See, that changes things. You see, the Gospels are told in a way that it's meant to be like a play. Going to church, people would play the drama of what happened and put the mystery into it. And so when you've forgotten what the mystery is, and you're just dealing with this whole thing with a real guy who went through it, it's a sacrificial ritual, and you charge the power in effigy. And that's why they'll always have, a center mass cross, whether it have the man affixed it or not. And but as an Odinist, I am not opposed to the imagery of a man hanging from a tree, especially if he's upside down. Dead. But screaming about something. Mission accomplished and all that. But anyway, accepting the bribe, he gave them permission to carry out the wishes themselves, so they seized him and crucified him in defiance of all Jewish tradition. Okay. Alright, so that's one explanation to know. That's one explanation to have, to add to factors about all the questions of what went on over there, if it is relevant to the arguments you may be having. So, the early Christians, replacing the last half of paragraph ending Greater Armenia on page 135. In the time of Cuspius, Fadus, and Tiberius Alexander, many of the miracle workers' followers came forward and declared to the adherents of their master that, although he had died, he was now alive and would free them from their slavery. Many of the common people listened to their preaching and accepted their call, not because they were men of mark, for they were working men. Some only shoemakers, others cobblers, others laborers, but they worked marvelous signs. In fact, nothing was beyond their power. Seeing the unsettlement of the people, these excellent procurators decided, after consulting the scribes, to arrest the men and put them to death for fear that the movement, though of no consequence at the moment, might end in a major upheaval. But in face of the signs, they hesitated and dared not take any action. Convinced that no medical treatment could account for such marvelous cures, and surmising that if these were not the work of God himself, they would soon be shown up. So they gave the men complete freedom of action. Later, however, they were persuaded by the scribes to send them to Rome or Antioch to be tried, banishing others to distant countries. So, these people, like as has been analyzed ad nauseum in the gospel, that the bad guy can have healers, by the way. Team Dark can have certain people that can heal, even though they're on the dark side. John of God in South America was a key corrupt player in this manner. So, if you are highly ignorant to medicine, if you're in a certain kind of backwaters because you have all sorts of things that are prohibited in your culture, like you don't work with certain sacraments because they're outside of your traditions, and you just don't do all these different things, like you're not like other pagans where they can be kind of like open. You're in this henotheistic culture. If you're one of us, you're also inclusively one of us. and therefore that means you are wrapped up in the aura of our God. And that's one of the reasons why, if Jesus is a myth, he's a recreation of other myths, and I'd rather go to those sources. If Jesus is a real man, then he is as flawed as any other real man, even if he was a good man or a good-intentioned man. And that's all I need. I don't need him to be Dr. Hillman's super predator. I just need to know that he was a mortal man, because I know how the higher force works, and he would never give a mortal flesh suit that much, that much power from a singularity. It ain't that ain't happening. That ain't happening. 5, a temple inscription about Jesus. See what it says down here about that. Following the wall of its own. And then annotation 2 is something about the zodiac. 3 is down below exaggerated numbers. Okay. Above these announcements was hung a fourth in the same characters. Greek, Latin, Jewish declared that Jesus, the king who never reigned, was crucified by the Jews because he foretold the end of the city and the utter destruction of the temple. 6, rending of the veil and the resurrection. In the days of our pious father, this curtain was intact, but in our own generation, it was a sorry sight, for it had suddenly rent from the top to bottom at the time when by bribery they had secured the execution of the benefactor of men. So how did he know that it happened about the same time that the bribe happened? The time the bribe happened is when it tore? Wasn't the bribe done quietly? Wouldn't that, or were you just able to openly bribe? It was so bad that, I mean, for reals? For reals? How did we get here, right? Was it just an open secret that there was a bribe because he just, did it, just off stage in front of everybody, though? I mean, either the people were just crazy, or there's still way more missing context. But you're talking about the few literate in a society, and so this is the best we're gonna get until we can pick apart some things from some other sources. The one who by his actions proved that he was no mere man. Many other awe-inspiring signs happened at the same moment. It is also stated that after his execution and entombment, he disappeared entirely. Some people actually assert that he had risen. Others retort that his friends stole him away. I, for one, cannot decide where the truth lies. A dead man cannot rise by his own power, but he might rise if aided by the prayer of another righteous man. Again, if an angel or other heavenly being, a god himself, takes human form to fulfill his purpose, and after living among men dies and is buried, he can rise again at will. Moreover, it is stated that he could not have been stolen away, as guards were posted round his tomb, 30 Romans and 1,000 Jews. All right, so they're saying that he had 1,000 Jews around him and 30 Romans, and so therefore he couldn't have had his tomb robbed. There was too many people. The logistics would be impossible. Sure. Well, that's kind of a lie, because because He turned all the fish and the bread into like a multitude to feed everybody. So how do we not know that he didn't have 30 Romans that loved him to death because maybe they were just looking around and they were just like, dude, they're going to kill... Dude, no, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit, right? So they all make it look good. They just all make it look good because fuck these guys. Right? Then Jesus bounces, goes on vacation, watches the fucking temple burn, and says, fucking told him so. Right? You know, what if Jesus fucking survived and he was just really bitter? He went away and like he died hating his movement and never wanted to be fucking seen again as he continued to hear news of what they were doing, what they had become. Wait a minute. Those guys are calling themselves Christians? And they're still doing the same shit I told them not to do? Whatever, right? So anyway. Alright, so the oracle and the ruler. Some took this as a reference to Herod, others to the crucifixion miracle worker Jesus, and others to Vespasian, replacing the passage beginning this key took to mean. So then there's correlations. All right, so I think we're done, actually. Yes, we're done. That's 401, 402. Okay, good. So we're going to take a break, and I am going to... Hang on 1 second. Let me put this all together. Hang tight. Setting up live. As live. There we go. Okie dokie. Alright, bear with me a second. I'm going to go take this... I'm going to play something else from here. What are we going to play next? Yeah, I'm just going to keep going. I'm not 100% sure what the next song sounds like, but it's like, we got enough space. There's enough space. There's like 2 songs. One's kind of like an interlude.
Well, can you hear me? I can't hear you.
There we go. Let me see here. Can you hear me?
You're muted.
Oh, whoop. There we go. Can you hear me? All right. I can't speak. I got to make sure I can hear you.
Yeah. You got me?
Yeah, I think so. You're coming in a little low. How close is your microphone?
Is that better?
Speak a little bit more.
Hello, hello,
Hello.
hello, hello.
All right, just speak into the microphone as best you can. I think we'll be all right. We've done this before. You're online all the time. This should be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now my audio levels are good. All right, man, how you doing?
Good, good.
All right, so everybody, this is Headless Giant. He's our surprise guest for this final episode of the Jewish War. I have some work to do in time stamping a few things to shoot out to a few people that'll find things in this interesting. Right, my reads are just like, you got to be into wanting to listen to a guy read. You know, I get it. It can be jarring. It can be cringy. So my audience is what it is. But yeah, man. So like I've now run through this book, and did you catch any of what I was going through there with the Slavic editions, which are all over gospel context?
I have not, but that's interesting. So the Slavic, is it the interpretation or Slavic translation?
No, I think that the thing is that there was Slavic releases of earlier versions of Josephus War that at the time the non-Slavic releases didn't want to have these passages because they were suppressing historical validity to the events of the gospel.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha. So these were the first ones.
Yeah. So like there's interesting context that's derived. Like Pontius Pilate after the trial takes a bribe. Like Jesus was not going to get harmed. And he walked out of that trial like protected, and then Pilate was bribed, and Josephus alleges that Jesus cured his wife, which is why it took a bribe to get him to release Jesus, because he was also basically a character witness. But it doesn't say whether everybody knew that Pilate and Jesus had a relationship. But it does explain why Jesus kept his mouth shut in the trial.
Great. So in this regard, I would again point back to the Hellenized Jews that were engaged with Antiochus Epiphanes, because I believe that that's the sect that most influenced Christianity. They were tossed out of the entire Jewish establishment. They weren't respected by the heads of the temple. And then for years, they've been kind of in the background, but it shows that they're more friendly with Pilate which goes along with why the Hellenized Jews were more friendly with Antiochus. They just wanted people to get along. And they figured, hey, he can put his image in the temple just as long as nobody dies. Well, the more Orthodox Jews, the synagogue, what are they called? The upper leadership of Judaism at that time decided that they were going to kill the one that Antiochus had chosen to be the leader of the temple. And so this is one of the reasons why he went through with the abomination desolation.
Are we talking about the Pharisees?
Well, the Pharisees, right? So these are the religious leaders of all of Judaism, and one sect was the Hellenized Jews that were more comfortable being occupied, and then the other side would be the more Orthodox position who was not. And so, if you look like you were saying about Pilate, is that they had a relationship with the people who were running the government, but they were very much shunned from the rest of Jewish society.
Yeah. There was, I thought it was very interesting that there's the first passage in these annotations was about John the Baptist, and what I did know already about John the Baptist is that he was kind of a wild man as what he was, and this was like a scene that involved him kind of like prophesying that their world is going to fall apart, because he came out and he was, what did he do? He jumped out and he insulted the Essenes, right? Like he came out and he said some stuff about how he wasn't going to do certain certain customs or something like that, and one of the guys was going to kill him. One of the guys was going to kick his ass. Like the passage said, he was going to tear him to pieces, right? But the violence was belayed, like somebody stopped it, and then he ran off, right? But it made me think to myself, is John the Baptist part of the Zealots, perhaps? Because we have this whole, the Zealots are instigated by the Essenes. The same way the woke left today uses like your ultra Presbyterian, whatever, your ultra Orthodox Christian types to be like, oh my God, the terribleness of their values encroaching on my attempt to smash.
Well, yeah, it's more like wind-up organization. They all had their own wind-up organizations. You can see this in the retelling of the different stories about Alexandria, because they would all have these groups of malcontents that would go out there and cause problems, and then they would cry foul and say, I'm the victim, and it was all just like a massive soccer game where all these people are trying to draw the foul. And so they would have these groups going out there, pushing people around, and then trying to draw the foul. This was very common in these sort of street protest politics of the ancient, Western Asia region. So you have a lot of these kind of wind-up mobs going out there and fighting in the streets and then claiming to be, targeted or victimized. And usually it ends up destroying a bunch of pagan temples in the process, which is kind of the whole point in the beginning of it. Was they didn't want to have standing armies, but they wanted to have networks of malcontents to go out there and create problems. And so the Essenes versus John the Baptist is a good example. But John the Baptist in general is an interesting character because I think it's in Philo of Alexandria. They talk about how this John the Baptist, I could be wrong, but the John the Baptist character had a group that was following him and didn't exactly want to integrate with the new Christian sect.
Yeah, and that's what Josephus says. Now there's a book annotation that brings to a point something that made me laugh, is that now the annotation is there because it's saying that he must have gotten the date wrong for the year of these events, because that would make John the Baptist 13 years old. And then I said it earlier in the show, and I said, oh my God, somebody call Dr. Hillman.
Right? But what the enduring impact of John the Baptist on the secret society scene shouldn't be ignored, because he's like the god of the Masons, he's god of the Templars, right? This John the Baptist character ends up becoming this sort of figurehead in more ways than one, because wasn't he decapitated? That
Yeah.
he was also, his skull was also used for a divination device. And so this talking head of John the Baptist was something that has been revered since ancient times, almost as if his sect of mystical Judaism or Dionysian Judaism sort of survived through the Eleusinian type mystery schools that they had around in there.
Yeah. His head, he would be. It makes me think of Mimir, who one of Odin's magical relics is he's got Mimir's skull with him, right? He is the god of the well of memory. He's the god of memories.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, John the Baptist, he seemed to be vegan, right? This was part of the, he never participated in Passover and stuff, right? He was, and Josephus said his whole point was to be like he loved being like this feral purity thing. That's what he was. He was feral and pure.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
I didn't catch any of that. My speakers went out all of a sudden.
Oh, okay. He was basically feral and pure, and he stood as the abject example against evil or something like that. That's the way Josephus phrased it.
Right. So I think if you, this motif of the man in the wild predicting the man to come, it seems like you have this herald type figure, right? And so the herald is oftentimes the leader behind the scenes, behind these new cult movements. You can see this with Nathan of Gaza and Sabbatai Zevi. Sabbatai was not a very smart guy. He was bipolar, and he couldn't really do a lot of the things for himself. But Sabbatai Zevi was predicted by this prophet, Nathan of Gaza. And so he was sort of like the power behind the scenes. They were just sort of propping up this guy that they said fulfilled all these different, Hebrew prophecies. But really it was probably Nathan of Gaza running things from, behind the curtain. And the figurehead that they put out there was just, sort of disposable. So I think in this case, you've got this John the Baptist character being the herald of this other guy, but he could have been the power behind the scenes. That was the figurehead.
Yeah, right. What I have seen in a lot of storytelling involving these cults of this nature, it's like if you don't have a cult leader emergent yet, and then you've got this movement rising that, you're looking for someone who ends up being the host for the egregore, right? It's just like Monty Python nailed it with Life of Brian, right? It's a similar kind of thing. They probably read Josephus going into it.
Right. But for the secret societies to venerate the John the Baptist character above Jesus tells me that they're worshiping the power behind the myth. They're worshiping the power behind the throne.
Well, right, exactly. It's just like it's implied, it's implied that if you've got a king, then he's gonna have the the king just doesn't coronate himself. He's not the guy who picks the guy who puts the crown on his head, right? There's a divine providence that holds the responsibility of putting the crown on your head, right? And so there's a priest, a shaman, a whomever, who gives the bestowment of the authority upon the executor of that civilization.
Like the priests of Melchizedek?
Right, exactly. Like the priests of Melchizedek, which the Melchizedek is summoned after the temple is destroyed. Right? And
Right.
and Josephus makes the point that he's a Canaanite. He makes the point that he's a Canaanite, which is interesting to make such suggestion, because a Canaanite is effectively a human with Nephilim blood.
Well, the Hebrews called the Phoenicians Canaanites because they wanted to make this distinction, but just a couple hundred years before that, there really was no distinction, and you can see that in all of the archaeological work in that region. So I think what it is this was the society that was going out of brand, and they had to come up with a new brand. And they had so many different tribes in the area, they figured, let's just use one of these local tribes with this Proto-Hebrew and say that we got all of our knowledge and information from them. Because if we can control them easy enough, we can control these mobs in the streets that decide to go out there and start breaking stuff because that's what they've been trained to do their whole lives.
And Abraham is not the only guy in Shem's family tree. You know, Semites are not just the 12 tribes of Israel. There's a lot of people that count as Semites. So that's very interesting, if any aspect of that part of the flood story is true, which the only truth that there is that people will base their prejudices upon it.
I think the most true thing about it is that they're naming the pieces on the chessboard when it comes to Noah and his sons, is that these are all the different pieces that are in play while you're trying to redefine their roles and put them in different places on the board. So all of these sons of Noah, they get different stories. You've read Dune before. You know about the Missionaria Protectiva, this idea that they hand out these different myths to different places around the world so that around the galaxy, so that if they receive one of these Bene Gesserit witches, they already have the foundational mythology that puts them into their society without too much bother.
Right. Now, I didn't know the very term that you said, because actually I have the first 3 books in the Dune series, and I was going to start reading them, I hope, sometime this week. But I did know from absorbing all sorts of high-end conversations on YouTube about Dune and having seen the movies and the Sci-Fi Channel series at least once. I did know that the Bene Gesserits are the ones, they're planting the seed in for shaping their belief systems through the women in the culture.
Right. Well, let's look at the ancient world in terms of motif. So you've got the philosopher wearing the toga, being in nature in the grove, right? And he's teaching the wisdom to the students. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the druids, which are wearing the toga in the grove, teaching the students. And then you've got these high priests of Melchizedek, which are, mysterious characters that come into the picture wearing the toga and teaching the students in the grove. There's this constant sort of theme of maybe these are the guys who spread these original stories and made them foundational to these different societies, almost like the Missionaria Protectiva that you see in Dune. I believe he got that from his analysis of these ancient religions. And what it says about it is the Missionaria Protectiva is a clandestine division of the Bene Gesserit sisterhood in the Dune universe, responsible for spreading religious myths and superstitions across planets to prepare societies for the future manipulation. The black arm of superstition plants elements of the panoplia propheticus, which are designed to protect and empower future members of the sisterhood as prophetic figures. The Missionaria Protectiva's work is often described as religious engineering, where they exploit humanity's psychological vulnerability to religious and cultural programming, ensuring that future generations inherit belief systems that serve the Bene Gesserit interests. So when you put all that together, that sounds like how they were managing societies back at the Bronze Age. Is they were injecting these different stories into all these different cultures. So it wasn't just Christianity and Judaism and Islam, but it was the Greek myths and all the rest of these Baal myths that made it up to Ireland and all the rest of these areas that had kin. So if they wanted to manufacture a type of religious obedience, you make the same base story level comparisons with all these other ones, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and but you also want to have your counter narrative, right? To cause the trouble, in our sophisticated parlance of the modern era, we would know it as the dialectic, that Hegelian dialectic and controlled opposition, right? Just because there is no difference between political party and religion.
That's where antinomians come in very handy.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Satanic Panic, you see how closely related these characters in the Satanic Panic are to the government, like Michael Aquino's relationship to the army and writing their mind war doctrine.
Right.
And then you got to ask yourself, hey, maybe they're using these antinomians as a problem reaction solution type setup. And you follow that back in history and you find that the Frankists, one of the offshoots of the Sabbatai Zvi cult, becomes integrated into the Catholic Church. Again, the antinomians get brought into the establishment over and over and over again, because the establishment loves to use chaos agents to scare the sheep back into the pens. And they were doing that back in these days too. All of the surrounding neighbors of the Hebrew and Christian people called them atheists because they were trying to destroy all of the gods. So their way of worship and their way of perspective was very different from the surrounding cultures, which made them stand out as being atheistic, because they didn't really consider their gods to be anything other than, garbage demons or whatever they call them nowadays. So the atheistic component made them the antinomians back in the, 1st century AD. So that's one of the tools of the establishment. To get people onto one side or the other, you've got to create this conflict in society that starts with an antinomian concept of the foundational values and principles of that society. Which is what they call satanic inversion today, but it wasn't satanic inversion when the Christians were doing it.
Right. Well, I think that the inversion to what is sacred, like, there's deliberate reasons why a lot of people make those choices, right? There has to be something that they want desecrated about that tradition as important to what they are doing. Because if they could use those tactics on other aspects of society, but they have to go after certain sacred cows, right? Because as foundational to fucking with somebody's soul, and no doubt.
Well, I was going to say these antinomians represent a departure from an intolerable system. So you could call the Martin Luther as an antinomian, right? Yeah. Because he was fighting against these core tenets of the Catholic Church at that time. And so you would have to have these emissaries of chaos so that you can create the synthesis that you wanted all along. So they start the wheel turning in a certain direction. They get fought against. People believe that there's a genuine conflict going on and will gravitate to one side or the other, creating this sort of societal anti-magnetism, right? You're driving that wedge in between civilizations, but you're doing that so that these cell groups, right, of ideas and technologies can split apart, change, go their separate ways, and you still have the foundational understanding that they don't. So as they're schisming, you're still behind the foundational myths that they still hold dear. So antinomianism never strays outside the boundaries of the cosmology of the original religion that set it up. So Satanism, being a response to Yahwehism, is still within the same paradigm. You know, if there was a schism that would want to be created within Norse mythology, you would have all of the people on one side flocking to Loki and all the other people flocking to Odin. And so it's within the conflict between the two that you end up spreading out society and creating a much bigger thing. But nobody denies that Loki is part of the pantheon. What they've done with Christianity is they kind of say that Satan is not part of the pantheon, which is not exactly accurate, but what it does is it keeps this antinomian imbalance in place. And now you've got, you know, a bunch of psychopaths running around claiming to be in spiritual warfare with the exact same side.
Loki is a key player in the mythos of the pantheon, but he is an anti-god. There's a classification of things known as anti-gods. I talk about this a bit, right? Like there is, like, you know, you look through the anthropology, the archaeology of the thing. There's never been temples of Loki in antiquity or anything else. We have made more of Loki, and I believe that we've done that to take away credit for what Odin does, because Odin is a trickster god, right? And so now most trickery we give credit to Loki, and we don't think about, you know, what if that was to Odin's credit? Or, you know, like just because it was a cruel trick doesn't mean it was Loki. This isn't Yahweh, you know, under Christianity being a nice guy, right? This is still like Odin, and he's gonna bitch slap you for something, right? You know, it's like that.
Well, what happens immediately after every dirty trick? You learn something, which would fall under Odin as well. He wants you to learn something. So here comes a dirty trick, because you're going to learn something. You know?
No, I think the thing is that, like, there's not everybody learns something from a dirty trick. Some people, they get worse. Some people, they don't catch it. They get caught in a vicious cycle. Jormungandr is the Ouroboros. Jormungandr is this child of Loki, and he feeds you to this ever-hungry serpent that is all around you, right? These are, you know, so like, we have our mythos about the War of the Gods. Our contentions are usually falling somewhere between sky gods and earth gods in reality, right? And there are important juxtapositions to each of those, right? You know, the earth gods are a lot more like hippies in Appalachia, right? And then like the sky gods are more like New York City high-rise, right? You know, one's all about aspirations, and one is about living with nature. And those, I think, hit certain primaries. I think the extremism of the Zealots is an out-of-balance interpretation of wanting to be with nature, right? You know, which can have the pitfalls of falling into carnal desires and losing your rational mind, losing your connection to your higher mind and what it is to be a man, and then you reduce yourself to becoming an animal.
Right. Well, I think that these polarities are far more pronounced and understandable within a polytheistic framework, whereas within a monotheistic unipolar framework, these polarities don't make a lot of sense. This is like, well, if God is good, then why would He create the devil to be bad? And it doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't think of the world as collapsed polarities creating a balance between good things and bad things, chaos and order, and all the other things. So when you lose the polytheistic understanding of the world, none of these things really make sense anymore, and so you kind of have to make excuses or have to make concessions. Whereas if you were looking at these things on a multipolar level, it would kind of start to make a little bit more sense.
Yes. So Headless Man, there's just a couple of minutes left on the Zoom call because I need to get more money in my life before I can start paying for Zoom again, and I wanted this to be an awesome little addendum to the end of the book, like I said. So, if you've got anything more on your head that you want to say real fast, otherwise, let people know where they can get you.
I do have something on my head. So this is a painting I just finished. It's called the Omphalos. And this is actually available for trade. I'm looking for arcane or occult knowledge that you have to trade for this picture. Very mystical picture. I think you can, if you or your audience has any kind of idea of something that they can trade that's off the beaten track, maybe it's a family tradition, something like that, that you have squirreled away that you haven't told anybody about, let me know. And you can email me at headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. This is worth more than money. So you have to have some pretty valuable knowledge, pretty valuable occult knowledge for you to get it. I've got 3 offers on the table. One is a highly adept poetry/magician that is going to create a poem that is fully integrated into my whole magical experience. That's one. The second one was this video of a plasma entity attacking somebody. I thought that was pretty interesting. It was ectoplasm, and you could see it on video. Pretty interesting. And then the third offer that I got was about a Shriner baby farm in Wisconsin. So this Shriner took a bunch of these women who were pregnant and created a human farm. So, free labor. And that was in Wisconsin, and I had never heard of that case before. So I'm going to get this thing.
What time period?
1970s.
1970s, okay. Wow, okay. Wild.
I think it was 1970s. No, it was 1930s. I'm sorry. I got to go back and look at those files.
Okay, 1930s.
But that would be something to go out there and investigate and find out if there's any of these, baby farm survivors out there to look into. But those are the 3 offers. If you've got a better one, email me at headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. I'm going to get this thing framed and signed all nice tomorrow. So if you've got that idea, you still got time. It's a very mystical piece. It's got a lot of energy, a lot of vril.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much, Headless. Guys, thank you so much in chat for tuning in. A couple people are going to see what they can do about the offer. And yeah. All right. I'll catch you guys later. I'll let you know what next thing is going to come to this channel. Have a great night.